And we're live, everybody. In San Francisco, what a gift that we have to be here with Joe Truss at his school. I just got a tour of Visitation Valley Middle School, and this is a real gift, y'all. It's a real honor and a great privilege to have you here with us in the Spark family.
Well, I appreciate it. Honored to be here in the community, and for me and you to connect 6-7 years later.
Yeah.
A lot has changed since then.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful to reflect on that and think about, just what we've learned.
Yeah.
And, what we could share.
That's right. That's right. And as always, so I can see we have someone in the house. If you're with us live, this is a conversation. So if you have any questions, if you want to chime in and make connections, please do. The whole spirit of this, I was just talking to Joe about the reason that I started this series was to actually break bread and to have conversations ourselves in real time, having exposure to different perspectives, hearing other folks on the grounds just like ourselves, but doing different work. Showing up with courageous leadership looks and feels differently for all of us. And so I love spotlighting people who inspire me and who are doing great work on the grounds. And that's really how the Spark series started, which was like, let me spotlight some folks. Let's have a conversation in real time that's not polished, it's not perfect, it's not planned or prepared. We're just having a real-time conversation. Same 3 questions are asked every time. And my biggest hope is that you all walk away with perhaps new ideas, new perspectives, something more to chew on and think about, and that you bring something to us and you offer something for us to think about and chew on, because that's how this all goes around, right? The spirit of the card game, which I did bring for you. I forgot to say.
Awesome.
This is all about bringing a space where everybody's story matters, where everybody can actually have the opportunity to slow down for a minute and to connect back to what really, really matters, which is our experiences. And we are the experts of our experience. Joe is an expert in a lot of arenas, in a lot of things. And I love spotlighting people who are working on projects too. And his project right now is this really inspiring blog series called Culturally Responsive Leadership. Yeah.
That's right.
I was like, I almost said relevant, but then I knew it was responsive. Culturally responsive leadership.com. We're going to talk more about it. But let's just kick off and say to talk about courageous leadership with you.
Well, I appreciate being here. We're just wrapping up a long day of middle school, getting ready for summer in the spring semester. So, energy is in the air, and, we're thinking about next year, thinking about this year, getting through this year, reflecting. So I'm definitely in the space of thinking about, where we've been and where we're going next. And, think about the summer, but also think about next year.
Yeah. And I have to say, we just took a tour. For those who haven't had a chance to come to Visitation Valley Middle School,
check it out.
Come check it out and check out their website, y'all. It's really an inspiring place. So we just walked around the whole school. There are murals. I actually have one that I can actually show you a picture of. And it's right outside the door. And it's created by students with students. It says equality. And there are so many spaces and places where students feel that their story and their perspective matters. They have a meditation center. They have a music center. The hallways are full of students' quotes and experiences and voices, their favorite lyrics, and there's music therapy, art spaces. I just have to say, like, what you've created here and what you've actually been a part of transforming in a lot of ways is really, really inspiring.
I appreciate it. I mean, I definitely know that things happened before I got here, and part of my job is trying to support what's been working, introduce some new ideas that may push the students a little bit further, support staff that have been grinding for a long time, maybe without the right support, without the right resources, and just connecting the dots. But it's been, it's a labor of love. Yeah. It is hard work, especially this time of the year.
Yeah.
But, we're definitely trying to move the needle and, get kids closer to where they need to be than they've been in the past.
Right, right. And this journey, it's been a journey, right? We met, like you were saying, 6 or 7 years ago, working at the same middle school in different leadership capacities. And, we were starting to have different conversations at that time about restorative practices and what it really means to honor all students and to be culturally responsive, to actually hold space for different cultures, different students, lived experiences, so that all students could thrive. And, from that place, you went on to become an assistant principal, and then now you've been the principal here for, this is your third year.
Third year, wrapping up, almost done.
Yeah. And something I've always admired about you, Joe, is that you've always taken a stand around social justice unwaveringly. And you've always pushed everyone around you with grace and thoughtfulness to think about things differently.
Yeah.
And that takes courage.
It does. Definitely comes at a cost, but it takes a lot.
Yeah. So what I want to hear from you all, I'm going to ask Joe in just a second what his definition of courage is. But for those who are in the space with us, I see we've got 5 people in the house. Feel free to engage, ask questions, make connections. Hi, Najeda. It's good to see your face in here. Let us know what resonates and what certain comments kind of spark for you. Feel free to jot down the words or phrases that really connect with you, because we want to know how what your reactions are. Oh, what is the cost? That's a great question.
The cost of being a courageous leader. I think time and energy for sure. I think so, but how I was going to answer the question around like, what is it to me? And, how do you be unwavering? I think it comes down to like, you got to have a moral compass, on everything, and if you don't have one, you got to build one. And if someone calls you out and says that your compass is pointing in the wrong direction, you got to reevaluate that and say, well, maybe I need to learn something more. Maybe I need to talk to some people. Maybe I need to reflect, but you have to have that, that compass that is pointing in the right direction. And, always asking yourself, is it moving in the right direction? And I feel like sometimes people ask around like, well, when am I ever done on this consciousness journey? When have I ever arrived at racial equity? And I say, if you ever thought you arrived, then it's done.
You're not doing enough.
If you're always asking, am I there and how do I get there? Then you're going to get closer to doing that. I think the cost of always asking those questions are we really there? Are we doing good enough? Are we doing right by the kids? Is it our fault?
Right.
How do we make it better for the kids? The cost of that is, it doesn't feel good always. It is your ego takes a battle, and if you're the one who's calling it out and you're not in a space where people are calling it out laterally, then you hold that. You know what I mean? Folks are looking at me like you're introducing this conversation of racial justice or implicit bias or cultural responsiveness. And, sometimes folks want to locate that on you and localize that to you and think that's about you. And, my job is trying to expand that bigger than me, right? Bring the kids in. Well, what do the kids deserve? What do your kids deserve? What is my daughter going to deserve one day when she is in a school? How should she be talked to? And the cost of that is people don't feel good. Sometimes we take it personal and, truthfully, we're not always ready to do it immediately. Sometimes we got to slow down. And, when you're pushing and questioning and advocating, it is hard.
It is hard. And relationships aren't always.
That's another cost, because sometimes people define relationships as feeling good. And when you make people feel discomfort or question their reality, right, you put them in some cognitive dissonance, that relationship sometimes takes a hit. You do something that's unpopular. All of a sudden, the air is very thick around me, and, like the response, even though you may drop some knowledge, right? That's not always going to be acknowledged, right? Folks more so feel like, well, you just like made me question everything and I don't feel good about that. So I'm not really cool with you. So, the relationships definitely take a hit.
We've got quite a few comments here from you never arrived to at the very least what feels like the cost right now. Jillian, did that answer your question? Thomas, what's up? Kids
what's
first.
Up, people? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. Yep, people get uncomfortable quick sometimes, right? And I was just talking with a group Tuesday night. Today's Thursday, right? Yeah. A couple nights ago, I was facilitating an engagement about gender equity, et cetera. And it happened to be for a rock climbing community. There was like a critical incident, and we were talking about what this metaphor of rock climbing is actually quite profound, because it's one of the most vulnerable sports to choose to put your life on the line, literally on a rock, and to know you could fall. But they were saying they actually made the connection to the metaphor of equity work, which is vulnerable. It's constantly, there are conversations that you don't necessarily have a roadmap for. And if you don't have relational trust, and if you don't know that people have your back, then you start to feel like if you fall, you could actually get hurt, right?
And that's the piece around the goal also of the leader is how do you create a space that is comfortable to do that, right? That there's enough relational trust to do the hard work, right? But sometimes, you know, at least what I've learned is like, I need to slow down my urgency because sometimes when I'm running so fast to the urgent work that needs to happen, I haven't necessarily always built the relational trust, whether that's through norms or through community agreements or just having some fun with each other. When you haven't really done enough of that, then there isn't that same foundation to now talk about responsiveness in the curriculum, right? Or bias in discipline or, you know, changing your whole practice. So, you know, some of that is slowing down and realizing that, you know, you got to do some of that groundwork first. And also you got to expand the context, right? Because if the context is only my school and me as a leader, then I'm going to feel the heat of everything versus like, well, let's expand the context to talk about public school at large, right? Statistics at large, right? And then now how do we feel about that? We're doing something about that. Then that's not about me as a leader. That's about us working together. And I'm, you know, always trying to identify who the real enemy is, right? Because if the system is the enemy, that's very different than me being the enemy as a leader who's saying we need to change our practices and do better by kids. It's a hard sell, right? I mean, because then it becomes a more overarching task of like, oh, damn, I got to do something about the system now, which some people get motivated by that and some people feel a little overwhelmed. Like for me, that's been something that's motivated by me. You know, we got to do something about the system.
I think that's why we first connected. Like, I remember we went on countless like walk and talks around the buildings when I was like, hey, I heard you say this thing. Can we look back and like dig deeper into what was underneath that for you, you know? Because I really wanted to understand. I felt some dissonance as well. And I remember thinking like, it's easy to hear something and then just let it slide, or like, it takes courage and it takes commitment to be like, hey, I heard you and I really want to dig in. And I remember feeling nervous about those conversations myself. Like, hey, I don't really know what I'm saying here, but I heard you and I really want to better understand. And now you take that at a macro scale. What you've done here is you've created conditions for people to, I mean, you all, this place is magical. I have to say that. I do not say that lightly. I just experienced a dismissal that was the most like
kind of calm,
chill. Kids are just being kids, loving each other, walking out, giving each other hugs. Like, just, you know, there's something in the fabric of this place that I knew I had to drive out here to see and experience, because I knew, it was real. It's just been really powerful. And so I want to, do either of you have recommendations for PD educational opportunities within this topic? Yeah, for sure.
Plenty. You know, check out my blog. But I mean, you know, the National Equity has great stuff. SFUSD has great stuff. I mean, just at least me being in the Bay Area, great stuff, right? The whole Courageous conversation. I mean, it all depends on what you're working on, right? So part of it is figuring out what your work is individually, and then what the work of your organization, whether it's a school or some department is, right? Is it mindset work? You got to look for some mindset PD and some mindset books. If it's practice and instruction, there's some books and some trainings for that, right? If it's around curriculum development, there's some books for that. If it's around leadership and team dynamics, there's some books and some trainings for that, and knowing the right one, what to do. And also sometimes the order, you know, you got to build the foundation first.
Order of operations, definitely. And I think that's a nice segue to how did you, you know, it's been 3 years and this space wasn't always this way, right? It took a lot of like baby steps of courage to actually choose courage over comfort, choose courage over status quo, choose to disrupt versus maintain. And so share an example, if you will. And Katie, let's check this out real quick too. I'm currently the assistant principal of an amazing Title I school, have been on a journey of increasing cultural responsiveness and equity in my building for years. I now have an opportunity to interview for a specialist position in my district office. Right on. Any advice? Oh yeah, we should talk.
Yeah, I mean, to do that work, I mean, you know, bring your experience of trying to do it, both as a practitioner and, you know, if you've been leading the work at your school, you know, lead from your experience of like what actually worked. It's always definitely going to be better than something coming from a book. But definitely what I've learned with that work is folks need to know what it is you're really talking about, like a little more specificity, like getting away from the theory. Sometimes some of the books get very theoretical and people don't know, especially when you get it to the hands of the practitioners, what does that even mean? Folks need some examples. They need a lot of support. And, with that work, like we were saying before, like mindset's got to be strong. Community has to be strong. It doesn't really matter because you can get into the work and then people shut down because they don't trust the people sitting next to them. They don't trust the leader. They don't trust the direction. They don't have enough pencils to get through the school year, so they can't even really talk about changing their practice. So give them the pencils first. Find out they need the pencils. Find out they need their sharpeners working, and then let's talk about some other stuff. Right.
It's like the Maslow's hierarchy of need, really. I mean, the conditions matter, but I think both of us would be happy to talk with you offline, Katie, because that's a lot, and that is exciting. It's a huge opportunity, and conditions matter. I often say there has to be an infrastructure for equity in order for it. Like it's like a trampoline. We need to have space. We need solid systems in place that are grounded in relational trust in order for this work to sustain, right? So back to the question, cool, trauma-informed teaching, yes. I wholeheartedly agree. There's a lot of great research out there and connections that Zaretta Hammond actually makes with her book. So I definitely recommend for both of you to check out the interview that was at the beginning of the month. I think it was May 4th. It's in here. If you scroll down after this, you'll see the interview with Zaretta. But now back to you. So let's think about a time when it was hard to choose courage over comfort, or it was hard to disrupt status quo, and there was a cost, but you did it anyway because you trusted your intuition and you trusted that with your moral compass in your hand, it wouldn't fail you.
Sure. So last academic year, we spent almost the good part of the academic year in a design thinking process to redesign our master schedule and Bell schedule.
That's a great one.
Right. And that was everything looking at how many periods of classes do we have? What courses do we offer? How long are the periods? Do we need long or short time for staff PD? We looked at all of it, and we went through, spent about 7 months doing that.
Wow.
And we visited schools, we read books, we thought about, what do we prioritize and what do we need these things? And we got to a point where, we looked at prototypes and we're going to look at block scheduling and early release and all this stuff. And we got to a point where folks were like, are we really going to change this though? Are we kind of just exercising, right?
Yeah.
This exploration. And I was like, no, we're going to change it. Right.
Yeah.
And we got to a place where we were going to change it. And, everyone was not in agreement to that. And, part of that is not always being super clear with where we're going and why we're doing it. So I've been learning how to be, more transparent with my vision. And it wasn't popular, right? It wasn't popular to go from, 6 periods a day to block scheduling and the class only meeting 4 times. It wasn't popular to decrease instructional minutes and increase staff collaboration time in the afternoon. Those things were not popular. It wasn't popular to do block schedules, go from 50 minutes to 72 minutes. But we did, because for me, I knew that longer periods allowed for deeper learning. I knew that extended staff collaboration time led to building deeper connections and doing deeper work across difference and across position for folks to kind of work. And I also knew that we were going to be doing some PBL and some deeper learning. I knew you needed time to do that, both to plan and really to implement it.
Yeah.
So, that was hard.
Yeah. That's a powerful example because there was a lot. Look at all the like and love. Thank you. So that's a great example because there are so many moving parts there. There's relationships, there's systems, there is literally minutes that you took a leap of faith to do that. I know because we did it the next year at ECP. We rehauled the whole Bell schedule so that there would be a mindset Monday where the Monday morning was shorter for kids so that the adults could come together on Monday mornings. At any rate, it took so much, and in schools, everything is interconnected, right? So a kid is interconnected to, you change one thing and there's a ripple effect for custodial time, parent pickup, all of the different moving parts. So what would you say, how would you describe the importance of celebrating those small wins and finding those? I love that you said that I remember you had this look at the bright spots
Mm-hmm.
back in the day. And when I saw it, I was like, I just love this guy. Look at the bright spots. So how did you always find a way to look at the bright spots?
Only because it hurts more to look at the dim spots and to focus on that. It doesn't make anybody feel better. And truthfully, because, you know that if you put effort and you put attention and you put support into things that are going well, more of that's going to go. And another thing is you got to celebrate it so that folks know that that gets celebrated.
Yes.
Right. Whether it's effort or innovation or thinking outside the box or trying something new, just taking a risk, part of it, you just have to do it. Right. And then the other thing is you got to go looking for it and, find it wherever that is. I mean, we're trying to do PBL next year, but right now we're celebrating the bright spots of where it's happening, wherever it's happening around the building, and just showing that it is happening. It's not new. This is not something that's coming from nowhere. We're already doing it. We're just going to do it better and, and bolder.
Right. And you do have the blog from a couple of weeks ago talks more about this.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll put the link to his blogs up here because I want y'all to check that out for sure. Yes, the book Switch. You like that book too.
That's right. Love the Heath brothers. They got some knowledge in there. And I mean, on that tip, there's a lot of good information in the education sphere. But, sometimes we don't really look at some of the stuff that's in the business sphere or the corporate sphere because we think it is all about capitalism and getting money. But there's some good ideas that have to do with psychology, right, and group dynamics that are great things if and looking at the bright spots has nothing to do just with making money, right?
Right.
Help you in life.
Right. And if we're really up to, when you get to a point where you're creative, when you're creating things, you're up against I'm actually intentionally in all of my work, I aspire to both reimagine systems and also dismantle systems. Every day I'm thinking about what can I reimagine and redesign and what needs to be dismantled. What am I unintentionally reproducing because I am a business owner? Capitalism is at play, and I either make a choice to not have a business and stay in my lane, or I think about how can I both reimagine what this should be and simultaneously dismantle some stuff that's oppressive and not helpful for all people. That takes a lot of work and it takes intentionality. And I think the corporate sector, there are resources for these sorts of things that in education, it's oh my gosh, I didn't know that there are thousands of emotional intelligence tools for the corporate sector because research has suggested that that's a revenue generator, and it's there are some conversations that are happening over there that I'm fascinated to learn more about, around how can we actually build bridges, and as we're doing so, make sure that we're dismantling some stuff that's not serving all people.
This makes me think of a great example here.
Okay.
You say that right. So
nice.
I've recently also been thinking a lot about space, right, and realizing that when you change the space, different things happen. Yeah. Right. Sometimes we think that. So a lot of times we do professional development or trainings and we talk about change what you're doing, right? And we say, change what you're doing, change what you're doing, change what you're doing. Then you go back to the same space and you do the same thing. Yeah. Right. And recently, first in a classroom, we redesigned the classroom as to what the space looks like. Right. And that, I like to say a lot of times, take all the single desks that are in the school building, put them in a pile, bonfire, and burn them. Right. Yeah. Destroy them with an axe, right? Because when we have rooms that have single seat desks and it look like rows, people do things that look like kids sitting in rows, right? That's so we had some teachers go through a design process with their classroom, came up with flexible furniture, brought in some little soft cubes, some rugs, some cool down zones, some panels on their walls, or whatever. And all of a sudden they started wanting to do something different, right? We have folks saying well, if I change the space, maybe I got to change what I teach and how I teach, right? And that was their own idea, right? And then we still ended up getting to changing practice and getting the culturally responsive teaching, right? And changing the instruction process, but we got through it through a roundabout kind of way, right? And so I've recently been thinking about how do you apply that to many different spaces, right? I showed you our teen center, right? We didn't have a teen center, but now we have a game room,
it's so cool.
With a foosball and air hockey, and that's great for kids. But then the question is what now happens in that space because we have these things that are there. And now what happens in the school because now we have this institutional space where kids have fun, right? Yeah. Now all of a sudden we have a tournament with our staff. We're having a tournament that goes across 2 months and we're building community and having fun and taking pictures. And now we got a trophy for the foosball winner of 2018. that would never happen
right
if there wasn't a foosball table in room 202. Do you know what I mean?
If you hadn't have thought to reimagine what's possible. Like, we get so into this tunnel vision, and I've been a product of this, right? Like, you're so used to fighting and swimming upstream in systems that weren't designed for you that you're like, I can't even see straight. Like, I would never imagine that someone could give me permission to take my desks out as a first year teacher. Like, that would have blown my mind as a first year teacher.
And like, I'm like, suggesting, getting in debates with folks like, just get rid of them. What do you want? I'll buy you any tables you want if we get rid of those desks from 1980. Like,
they
get rid of them.
represent something.
And also, like, all of a sudden, different things happen. Oh, well, if I got this, and like, maybe I can get some tall ones, and let's put tall tables on the side of the window so the kids are looking out the window. Like, great. Yeah. That's a great idea. That's much better than sitting and writing lines and working in a textbook. Sounds 100% better. Yes.
And then people get excited to actually be in their classroom space because most people, hey, Wiley, it's live now. We're live. Tune in. Ask a question. It's good to see you. So we're talking about the power of space. And this reminds me of a quote that I believe Steve Zweibeck said, which is, change the structure and you change the experience. If you want to change an experience, change the structure. If you want to change the structure, then you'll change the experience. And so I can't underscore the power of what it's a small spark, it's a small move that created that foosball room, and now there are like reward systems in place. People want to go in there, and it's this hot
kids are doing play therapy over the foosball table. Yeah. As opposed to like, I don't want to go to therapy. I don't want to talk to my therapist today. And now they're using this in this cool kind of way. Yeah. We have a staff lounge where there are little cafe tables that are like high tables, like they're sitting in a cafe. And now what are folks doing? Sitting around a table talking to each other instead of sitting at this long table, not talking to each other, right? It feels like you go into a cafe versus I just went into the staff lounge with crappy microwaves,
Right. It's the little things that make such a difference down the road. And those are great examples. And now I'm curious, as you think about how you might describe to people who are there's a range of people in this room and in this space, in our virtual Spark living room. Some folks are really versed in education. Others are new to this space. How would you define culturally relevant leadership, given that you coined the term?
I think in one way it's simply the leadership that's going to lead on one way to just culturally responsive teaching and culturally responsive education for kids. Mm-hmm. That's something that fits into that. I mean, trauma sensitivity, cultural relevancy, application of knowledge, right? Like kids actually loving that they come to school. So there's like, what are the leadership moves and the levers to pull to do that? Yeah. Right. And then, for me, I'm trying to pull some ideas from change management, some ideas from design thinking, some ideas from critical pedagogy, because I kind of feel like the other piece is like, we're not just changing it to be innovative, right? For the sake of just being artistic and having some conference where we say we're innovators, like we're trying to innovate because what we're doing is not working for students of color, for poor students, for immigrant students, for our oppressed students. So we're innovating with this critical framework in the back of our mind, right? This Freirean philosophy of school should be serving the students who've been least served so that they can actually transform society, right? Yes. So all of it's in service of that, right? So I'm interested in looking at, some of those overlaps between those, very, crazy, dense ideas, but like, somewhere in that intersection is, I think, a blueprint for making school that works.
Yeah. Yes. Powerful. Rachel Wiley, yes, it does. And you are on fire. It's good to see you. So tell me, a lot of people do, and I accidentally just did this, so blind spot for myself. I just use interchangeably responsive and relevant. It happens all the time, and I try to check myself, and I am curious, how would you describe the difference between the two so that I can be conscious of that as I make choices to use the right word, because I know that they're used a lot differently.
Yeah, I mean, and I think there's been an evolution of terms, right? I mean, in the 60s, sometimes we started getting into like, not even multicultural, but it was like Afrocentric curriculum. And we kind of had the ethnic studies kind of movement. Then we started getting into like cultural relevancy and responsiveness and multicultural education and social justice. All that kind of stuff is kind of circulating. I mean, I would say relevancy it's relevant, right? It connects to things that are for kids, right? And, you know, some of that has to do with race and experience and identity. Some of that's just, does it connect to living in a city because my kids live in a city, right? Does it connect to 2018 because kids are living in 2018, right? That's like, is it relevant or not? You know, responsiveness is you know, by definition, you know, does it respond to where kids are and what they need and where they are as people, right? I mean, Zaretta talks a lot more about, is it responsive to our identity and how we are socialized to be, whether that is like straight from birth and how we grow up, but then also just kind of what's embedded and socialized through generations of kind of where we come from. And that gets into, you know, she's talking about collectivism and kids working together versus kids working independently, right? That's more of a responsiveness, right? And so the leadership piece, you could apply that to the leaders, but like, I'm thinking of the levers to pull so that we can do that with the kids. You got to do some of that with the staff for sure, but sometimes you can get lost in thinking that it's all just about the adult space and the adult comfort, which sometimes could take a toll, right? And if I make decisions based on my needs and what's easiest workflow for me as a principal or me as a teacher, you know, that might not be what makes a difference for a young student. Yeah.
No, that's really important because language really matters. And I think I've internalized, because culturally relevant teaching was the buzz phrase all when I was in grad school and beyond. And then it shifted. And I'm glad that to me, both that I just heard that and now I've internalized it, and also that there is a consciousness about the need to be intentional in how we respond to different young people depending on where they're situated relative to opportunities, relative to racial justice, social dynamics, and the system of oppression that is the education system. And so if we're responding and not reacting, that's a significant shift. And I thank you for that clarification because I needed to.
And I'm still figuring it out. A lot of the terms overlap. I mean, ultimately, like, is it for the kids or is it not? You know, is it for their upliftment and empowerment? Or is it not? You know?
At the end of the day, it's like the term is the start, and then how you actually, the stance that you take is everything. Because people use restorative justice, restorative practice, restorative service, and then how you do that is actually the make or break experience.
Right. Are you building relationships or are you not? You know, are you generating, improving and rebuilding the community in the room and classroom or not? You know? And do you know why you're doing it too, right? Or not? We're not just doing this because it's a buzzword. We're doing it because it's usually not done. Right. And we're actually taking an act of civil rights, right? And like redoing something that was done wrong originally, right? So I mean, it sits in this context of, you know, making up for decades or centuries of oppression, that we could do something differently, something better this time.
And undoing some stuff. And sometimes that literally means taking the desks out and burning them.
Hey, there's no reason we need those desks anymore, you know? There's a lot. I still go in a lot of classrooms where I see them.
They're everywhere. They're everywhere. How do you include SWD in your equity work? Snaps for that. I think responsiveness also speaks to students leading. Amen.
SWD?
Yes. SWD. Tell us more about SWD. There's so many acronyms.
School-wide decisions, maybe? I'm really good.
School-wide discipline.
School-wide discipline, that's a good one. We'll
come back. Tell us more, Katie.
We'll see if we get a description.
But student leadership, let's talk about that, because we both had a lot of energy around that back in the day, and I'd love to hear what what are the ways in which you hold space, because even before we push start, you were like, I mean, I've done a lot, but it's really the people. Like that music teacher, she did it. And like some people just needed permission to do the thing that they love. And you're really good at doing that, like holding space and giving space so that people can be them and not feel constrained. And so what's like one example or something that you're proud of in terms of student leadership here?
I mean, I think, so part of that is it gets back to responsiveness of like, and especially in middle school, it's like whatever kids want to do, right? So like every year we've had a group of students that want to do a dance crew, right? You can go to any school across the country and like there's a group of kids like, we need to start a dance crew. We're going to meet after school. I got signups, right? And can you ever respond to that? And this was probably the first year where we actually had the right staff member that like went super deep and like it doesn't seem like it sounds like leadership, but like, you know, young girls are doing some dance, right? But then it also turns into a Black girls rock club, right? Right. And now they're not only kind of dancing and performing, but now they're leading and doing emceeing at all the talent shows, right? And like these are students who had trouble during the school day, but all of a sudden they're in this leadership role in front of their whole entire staff, whole entire school, taking charge, right? I mean, and then, then now they have that experience, and then I can contact them and say, oh, I got these parents coming in to visit the school, or this prospective fifth grader, can you give them a tour? You know what I mean? And like, it's just about being able to connect those dots so that, a student is having a different experience than versus like if they were just blowing it up, like, now I'm out, now I'm in the counseling office, now I'm in trouble, now I'm in a referral. There's that like line of an experience, or you really like that, connect you with a really good person. I'm gonna give you somewhere to kind of put that energy. Right?
That difference. And that's life trajectory shifting right there, because I can bet that their grades improved because they had a purpose and they had.
Part of it's just like they want to be here, right? I mean, like, kids who struggle, they don't want to be at school because like they don't trust the school, or they don't trust the system, or they haven't had success, right? Changing that, making them actually want to be here. That's trajectory changing, right? Because I mean, either that or they get pushed out of schools,
right?
Eventually,
right. And it's those little things, giving a kid the opportunity. Giving a kid an opportunity to lead and shine and give a tour. That small thing you see.
And like sell your school, and all of a sudden kids are like, I really like this, I really like that, and you flip the script where they can talk about what they like, and you see a different side of it.
Totally. And then you remind them that you saw them shining.
That's right.
All right. Thanks, y'all. Thank you for reminding us about these acronyms, because I clearly need to brush up on my acronym game. Students with disabilities, leading and demonstrating what they need from an educator. Yes. Thank you, Susie. Loving the two of you. Wishing I could have taught with folks like you guys who have your passion, deep knowledge. Oh, thank you.
We're hiring. Let me know what you might want to do.
She was my art teacher in elementary school.
I got a Spanish opening.
She was my art teacher.
I got a reading intervention. You want to do some of those things?
She's in Texas.
Shoot me a resume. That's right. We can relocate. We got a relocation.
We got Zoom virtual classes. Come on. Okay. Students with disabilities. Tell us more about exactly the question that's underneath that.
So how do you include them with equity work? So great. So last year we had focal students. Our focal students were African-American students. This year, towards the end of last year, folks said, well, what are we doing about English language learners? And what are we doing about our students with IEPs, about our students with various learning differences? So they became the focus of this year, right? So we spent some time where our special ed specialists were teaching and sharing their best practices with the greater staff of like, these are the things that work, right? And for me, this gets back to project-based learning on one hand, because like if we can get kids doing stuff and making stuff, then they see more utility in what they're doing. They're more checked in, they're more bought in, and they're going to be more just awakened, you know what I mean? I mean, versus like I'm in that small class and I'm doing this and I really don't like school. The other thing I'll say around equity is we've redesigned our bell schedule to create a 7th period so that all our kids get a reading intervention, right? Something that is pretty absent in secondary ed, right? After the 3rd, 4th grade, if you don't got it, you're on your own, and you're slowly getting pushed out of education. So now all our kids get reading intervention, and our students with disabilities get an even smaller pullout. So those kids are getting 1-on-2, 1-on-3, and sometimes 1-on-1 support just to make sure that they are, in this case, building their phonics, building their decoding, building their comprehension skills so that they can ultimately get access to grade level content that, is truthfully getting denied from them because they can't read on grade level. I mean, that's the biggest crime that we have. I don't care about any of this stuff, right? Standardized testing. Who cares what our proficiency on math and English standardized testing is if the students aren't reading on grade level? Doesn't matter.
Right. Reading is the predictor of how a young person fares in society, and there's so many connections to the dropout rate with reading levels and being off grade level. And that is a significant, there's a lot underneath what was just said. So hopefully that answers your question. And I feel connected to the focal student work because that allows space for everybody to find a way in and to empathize with a young person, to try to like put yourself, focal student work, for those of you who don't know, it's an equity strategy. It connects to Zaretta Hammond's book around learning partnerships and the model that we used at the National Equity Project. So there's just 2 little plugs. And I love that you took on a spotlight, like a demographic to spotlight, and say, we're all going to do this so we can learn more about these young people and what their needs are and where our gaps are and what we can do to get better, right? Would that be fair to say, like, some of the work was, and how you all kind of engaged in learning around that?
I mean, yeah, I mean, we've redesigned our schedule for our students who were behind, right? I mean, usually you design for the students who are on level, or you design for your advanced kids, and then all of a sudden other kids are in these remedial classes if they ever get it, right? Versus saying, no, most of our kids are behind, so we need a 7-period day. Everyone's doing reading intervention, and let's see what happens with that. And then that started happening there, and then those ideas started getting shared with the greater staff, and now we're sharing best of best practices for reading intervention and reading comprehension skills in all classes, right? I mean,
Nice.
What else should we be working on, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and once we get that, then maybe there's some stuff that's more important than that.
Yeah.
But, our kids should be able to read on grade level.
Heck yeah. And so that was a result of the focal student work? Like, that was something that
I mean, that was a result of getting on equity of looking at the data.
Yeah, okay.
Right, so
yeah,
you could look at the data, you get your discipline data, you get your standardized test data, but what we saw is that all the kids who were red or like below are not proficient in reading and in math, and also highly represented disproportionately in discipline. All of those kids were below and far below in reading. And I was just like, well, okay, well, let's go to the foundational piece there.
Yeah.
Much harder to do, right? We got to hire a reading teacher. We had to train folks on how to do it. We had to get some more money. We had to hustle, right? But this year we saw anywhere between double and triple the growth in reading proficiency through doing that, which is huge, right? Because, like, I mean, usually kids don't make any growth, and you pass it to the next level. And then, I was a high school teacher where kids couldn't read on grade level, and you're like, what are we going to do? Like, we don't got the money. We can't do anything for that.
Right.
Maybe you're on your own, right? I mean, when you're 11th to 12th grader, like, the school's not built for that.
Right.
So we're rebuilding the school in part for that right now.
Yeah, and making space for everyone. It reminds me of the rising tide lifts all boats, right? Like, if you make one shift, everybody rises. And the cool thing about this, and what we ended up doing at Elmhurst, we had a program called Rise Up, which is very similar in model, which was like, when you meet kids where they're at, it's homogenous in some sense. So you're not called out for being in the red, but you were just said that you're told, like, hey, you're going to work on this skill for now. We're all working on something. We're all trying to get better. So you're working on phonics. We're working on multisyllabic words over here. And these folks in the other room might be reading a 12th grade level text because they're reading at college level or something. Like, there was a range of kids. There was a small group in our always, and as there are with most kids, right? Like, there's a bell curve. And I think when you honor where kids are at and give them some agency in the reading that they get to have, making that option kind of responsive and relevant, and making sure that young people, especially, I was always very passionate about needing more text that, like, spoke to kids' experiences that are at first, second, third, fourth, fifth grade levels for middle schoolers. Like, they need to be able to see their story in that text. Otherwise, it's so clear that they're reading elementary school text, and then they feel like, ooh, why am I in this class? There's so much at play. But how do you kind of, this will be my last question, and then I'll ask you about your learning edge, because I know we're getting to time. But how do you make sure to infuse space for kids to advocate for what they want in the curriculum?
I mean, the beauty of, like, this particular class that we had this year called Accelerated Literacy is that there was just continual conversation between the teacher and the student, right? So, like, we bought books that they wanted to buy, right? So, like, they sat down and looked at the catalog, right? So they knew their reading level. We got high interest, low level reading books that was in the band that they were, and that represented what they wanted, whether that was about their racial or ethnic background, or just the fact that they really liked this particular topic, right? And, like,
skateboarding.
You want those books? Like, there's a kid that I talked to day after day, and one of my teachers was saying, I can't get him to, like, read. I can't get him to do the thing. And every day I was just telling him, what book do you want? I'll buy you whatever book you want. Just tell me what book you want. I'll buy it for you. And he's been working with the teacher all year and doing some pull-out one-on-one work. And at the end of the year, now not only did his reading score grow up, but, like, he feels much more positive about reading, which also translates to feeling positive about school. He happens to be an African-American young male as well, right? And that's one student that, is thinking different about his education, right? He's going to be going to 9th grade, not on grade level yet, but much closer than he was before, and having a positive experience with school, which, it's a game changer.
Yes. And that's another life trajectory changer, right? These moments, these little moments that we have every day to ask. We asked our students, they decided. It's really that simple. And we complicate this simple act of showing love and empathy and understanding to each other. And that is so profound, that example. And it like,
it's just humility though, you know, and knowing that it's possible, you know, like, we try to do prizes for kids doing the right thing, whether that's good behavior or good academics, right? Ask the kids, what do you want? Like, what prize would you like? And they're like, oh my God, I get to pick the prize. Like, I want some headphones. Like, you want the headphones? We'll get 2 headphones. Like, if that's going to be what, like, keeps you in the game and, like, locks you into doing what you need to do, then, like, you want an iPod too? Like, whatever. Like, if that's the thing, right? Like, then let's do it, right? But we ask kids, like, what electives do you want, right? Do you want kids pick ethnic studies? You know, they picked drama for next year. They're picking whether they want student leadership or whatever, and then we have to rework our classes to serve kind of what they want.
That's so huge. It sounds so simple, and it's so huge. I'm feeling the love. I love y'all. Yes. Thank you. And to think about the power of unattachment, right? I think Confucius says the root of all suffering is attachment. And so we suffer when we get attached to things and we're like, oh, no. The prize last year for the trophy was the iPod. And kids are like, I don't want an iPod. I want the headphones. And then you get attached because of tradition or whatever. And I have this conversation with principals all the time around, like, most principals have around the same budget. Like, he's not rolling. I mean, he sounds like he's rolling. I'm like, can I get an iPhone, please? Because I'm like, where are you getting these headphones
some
from?
grant writing here and there.
I mean, it's a hustle. It's a constant hustle. So I want to name that. Like, you don't have some extra budget for prizes. You make priorities, right, around what matters. And student agency is a huge priority for you. And so then you reimagine what you do with all the Tetris puzzle pieces. And then you say, I'm going to stay unattached to the headphones for next year. I'm going to be committed to asking. That's what I'm going to stay attached to. And I just want to appreciate that and acknowledge that not enough people are doing that. And it's a powerful, beautiful thing what you're doing. For sure. This is a special place. And this is, like, I'm telling y'all, that the little choices, like, everybody in this virtual living room right now can make one choice to do something differently tomorrow, to ask a kid, to ask a young person, to ask a teacher, like, what do you want? What would motivate you more tomorrow? Like, what will keep you motivated? And it's just amazing what we hear when we really listen, when we commit to really, really listening and actually doing something differently because of what we heard. And so I'll just end by asking you, like, both, like, how would you describe your learning edge? Like, what are you kind of committed to learning more about these days? And where do you see your blog going? And then anything else I haven't asked that you just feel called to share?
What am I learning about right now? I'm definitely, still always learning how, and in my case, so I'm, naturally someone who has, like, a lot of big ideas and a lot of big picture. I'm always learning how to be more detail oriented with that and follow through. I'm also always learning how to be more inclusive in my process of doing that. Something that I struggle with, because, like, I'm just like, let's go, let's move, right? And I forget that, like, oh, that's right, I got to talk to people and I got to, like, make sure we're all on the same page. And I actually need to be on everybody's page, not just my page, right? And that's something I'm learning, how to do that and how to balance the urgency of, like, where we need to go and what needs to happen with where everybody is at, so always learn about that. I'm definitely getting more into literacy and learning how that, we don't always get trained in how to do literacy, right? But it's something that's so important.
Right.
So the more I know about it, the more I can support folks to do that in the right kind of way.
Yeah.
As far as just where my, like, writing and blogging kind of stuff is going, I'm just trying to reflect on, my learnings as a leader, share some tips that I've picked up along the way, share some reflections, some mistakes, trying to identify the right levers to pull, right? I mean, I was talking with a colleague recently around, we gotta build the plane before we fly it, and part of it is like, okay, well, so what plane are we building? And, like, you were saying, like, the infrastructure, what's the infrastructure that is going to get us really ready for equity, right? How do we engineer for equity? You know, like what does that look like so then we can actually do the work.
Yes.
And, you know, how are we intentional through that process so that we kind of know where we're going, you know, and, you know, ultimately trying to figure out how to do it right, how to do it better, and how to collaborate and get best practices from other folks to serve the kids. I mean, that's all the only thing we're here for, trying to find shortcuts in any way we can do it faster because the kids need it today.
Right.
You know, but, you know, it takes a while to build.
Yeah. So many golden nuggets in this conversation, and I appreciate all the energy. Let's see if anybody else has any final questions. I want to honor your time and honor the space. Doing something differently based on what we heard is so important. Kids know when you're really listening to learn and understand them, and they'll talk more when they trust that relationship that you build with them. Yes, Lindsay. Yes. To serve what they want. Ask and let them decide. Amen. And Katie says she loves your blog.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for reading. Really, tell a friend.
Yeah, tell a friend. Share this. This guy's up to some great stuff. And I celebrate people, courageous leaders. This space is for courageous leaders, people who choose courage over comfort, choose the moral compass over status quo, choose stepping outside of the box in service of young people, choose racial equity, hard conversations, and not knowing the way out and walking down the path anyway, because you're going to actually blaze the trail as you're on it. And that's okay.
And I'll say something about that is like, you talk a lot about bias to action, right? Knowing that you're going to make some mistakes, right? So like I made plenty of mistakes. Part of it is like owning it, saying, hey, you know, like I'm trying to do it because I'm trying to do right by kids. Yeah. Maybe I messed this up. Maybe I didn't share it early enough. Maybe I wasn't transparent enough. Maybe I didn't really give enough framing or enough vision or whatever it is. But like this is what I'm trying to do. So let me try to clean it up, learn from it, and like do it better the next time. But you know, I'm trying to do it for the kids.
Yeah. You're doing it. You're not trying. You're doing it. And you're doing it, and it's a powerful thing. Please repeat the name of your blog. Yeah. Sure.
Culturally Responsive Leadership. You can search it. You can also just put it in culturalresponsive.leadership.com. It's a blog. Yeah, we'll see what it turns into. And there might be some videos coming out in the summer. And you know, who else knows? But right now it's just a space to record some ideas. You know, hopefully to like connect and have people share their best ideas, right? Because I've learned my best stuff from other leaders. You know, that's how I accelerate my growth.
Yeah. Right on. Thank you for asking for what you need, Susie. And any final words or reflections before we close out for the day?
I think this piece around the bright spots, like that's been a big theme this year. One, there are bright spots there, you know. Two, you got to acknowledge them because they're definitely going to fuel you as a leader and as a practitioner. And if you acknowledge them in the right way, they're going to fuel others, right? And if you water that grass there, it's going to grow, you know. And I mean, that's the change piece right there. You got to find where it's happening, even the smallest amount, even if it's one person or one kid, and like figure out, study that piece, recreate it, and kind of grow from there, you know. And, you know, I mean, that's going to be the thing that will keep you kind of doing it, right? There's always going to be another hammer to nail down, right? But you find something that's actually working, you know, one relationship that some people have, you know, why does that relationship work between you guys? One team that works really well. Let's go watch that team now, you know. One classroom that's really doing great work where like kids are talking and you know, they're following the rules and they love the teacher and they love the learning. Let's go watch that classroom and see what we can learn from there. And build from there, you know. Look for, you know, and then that'll give you the quick wins too, because that's a quick win right there, right? It makes people feel good, right? And it gives an idea of what it looks like too. Yes.
Look for the bright spots. Go there every day. Commit to it. You know, like sit in it. Find the classroom, find the garden, find the space. You know, I did that every day. I went to this one classroom, especially when it was a hard day. It was like, I know where my bright spot will always be in this hallway. I'm always going to have a bright spot in every hallway and every space, because this work is hard. It's not for the faint at heart. It's not a sprint. This is a marathon. This is the work that will never end. It will go beyond our lifetime. And so we have to have each other. We need the bright spots, because that's what keeps us going. And what a bright spot you are in my life. And I'm genuinely so happy that we've rekindled and reconnected.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you all.
Thanks for tuning in, checking it out. Join in.
Right on.
Tell us what you think.
Much love to everybody. Have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll be in touch soon. Take care. Woo, woo, woo.